15 billion DPS. We hit 15 billion DPS. Hey everybody, it's Curse, and today I wanted to bless you with an absolutely ridiculously overpowered Flashbang Mage setup that we landed on. And this build just trivializes the game. As you can see, we're clearing Forge with some ridiculous more life multipliers on the enemies, while hitting crazy DPS numbers over 10-15 billion DPS. We can clear Wrath 10 plus 100 without ever having to worry about being in danger. So the DPS and coverage, I must stress that this build hits things from multiple screens away. So this crazy damage plus crazy coverage combined make it so that survivability is almost unnecessary, but even the survivability of this build is absolutely top tier. You can see we have a 830k life. You can definitely push that to 1 million, and 75% of that is going to be reserved so that we can get a bunch of elemental damage from that. But the remaining life grants us extreme survivability, comboed with 96-97% evasion. The build just has a lot going for it. It's definitely the strongest thing I've played in Slormancer thus far. Shout out to the Real Brutaxe, who suggested that we pivot from Nova and Orb procking to Temporal Missile and Orb procking. So let's jump right into the build guide. Irashaimase! Alright, let me start by highlighting the general concept of the build. Basically, we stack life, combo that up with converting max life to elemental damage, as well as missing max life to elemental damage. This one gets scaled with increase in elemental and other elemental more multipliers. And so at that point, we have stupid numbers of elemental damage. And it's all about choosing the right vessel for our elemental DPS. And for this particular build, we've gone with Temporal Friction, which makes it so that Orb of the Arcane Master starts triggering temporal explosions when procced by a temporal skill. And here you have a bunch of choices: Arcane Missile to convert it to Temporal, Temporal Attunement Pulse, Rift Nova, or Wall of Omen colliding with Orb of the Arcane Master. So that is high level the concept of the build. Get lots of elemental damage with max life stacking, and then proc tons and tons of temporal frictions with whatever you choose. So having said that, let's go into a little bit more detail into the Ancestral Legacy. Truly, it is all about Elemental Warrior and Elemental Pact. And like I said in my previous video, I'm going to highlight again, Elemental Pact gets scaled by your increased elemental damage and your elemental damage multiplier. Remember this 156,000 added. If you go to here, elemental damage, you can see added flat incorporates that 156. Gain from conversions, on the other hand, the 123 references this number from Elemental Warrior. So this one does not scale as well as an Elemental Pact. Other than that, we benefit greatly from Obscure Retribution because of the 25% life lock. We don't care whatsoever about the aura. The aura does nothing. We just want a life lock to get even more elemental damage from Elemental Pact. Dark Ritual is interesting because on paper you'd think it's a 50% more multiplier, but it only works with the primary and secondary skill damage. So with these damage number, it does not scale the temporal friction DPS. So this number is not impacted by your Dark Ritual. So keep that in mind. It does add a little bit, but it's not as much as you might think. Here we get a bit more increased elemental damage, even more increased elemental damage. These are super high value for the build. And Burning Shadow gives us a bit more critical strike damage, which is beneficial for the build. And then for our fancy Ancestral Stone here, we go for the additional projectiles because this is a projectile build. So this is the setup that we've gone for. I do believe this is the best way you can spend your 7 points. And then in terms of whether or not we want Proj, or perhaps something else with our fancy place wherever you want stone, you can try some other stuff and see what works best for you. But I like the extra Proj. So like I mentioned, Orb of the Arcane Master and particularly Temporal Friction is our main DPS. And to make the best use of it, we try to reduce cooldown as much as possible with 3 of the skill nodes here. Note that reducing the damage of Orb of the Arcane Master only reduces this damage and not the temporal friction damage. So keep that in mind. This is called a secondary damage. Also keep in mind that this secondary damage cannot Ancestral Strike. It can crit strike, so it benefits for crit damage, but it cannot Ancestral Strike. And then we convert the skill into a clone skill so that we can automate it a bit more. We just gain pretty much nothing out of Orb of the Headmaster. So this node is absolutely useless. So might as well just automate things a little bit more. And then we go for Arcane Missile. And in Arcane Missile, we go attack speed. Convert to Temporal is must. Without that, this Temporal Friction will not proc. So make sure to convert to Temporal. And then Evolve and Overcome is so sweet. It's so overpowered, I feel like, this node. All you have to do is max out, let's say, a rebound chance, because we get some rebound chance from Devoted Scholar. And then we get Pierce and Fork 100% for free. So pretty high value. And then there's some time lock shenanigans. But the primary purpose here is to get more Pierce, more Fork, more rebound, so that we can get even more Temporal Friction procs, because you just have Arcane Missiles running all over the place. They cover the entire screen. It's just incredibly powerful. For our Devoted Scholars setup, here I would actually say you can choose Arcane Commander or Devoted Scholar. If you choose Arcane Commander, you can actually plop 3 clones, all of them spamming Temporal Friction. I would argue that doesn't really benefit us very much inside for mapping in particular. For mapping, you just need one. One clone is enough. You saw how it works in Wrath 10+100. One clone just casts this one time, and then you get like, I don't know, 10 projectiles, 10 orbs. All of them getting procced by hundreds and hundreds of missile, and they're just explosions everywhere. Your whole screen is one massive flashbang. We don't need more than one clone. And that is the reason we went for Devoted Scholar, which on top of that, with this last specialization into Wall of Omen, splits all projectiles into 2. So that includes both the missile and the orb. So it just gives you so many additional procs. Here's the rebound chance that I was talking about. It also sets up this Arcane Missile for success. You only need to get 65% rebound from your items once you have bouncing magic. And then the rest, I don't know if it matters too much here. This plus 10% elemental damage is nice if we can proc Time Lock, extra damage in Time Lock, a little bit of tenacity. Area increased size is actually pretty good for the build. You want to stack area increased size because, as you can see, this radius is 8.31. Let me try and give you some perspective. Arcane Breach, as I have it right now, is 7.5 yard radius, and that is with area increased size of 177. So if I cast Arcane Breach right here, that covers all the way up to here. That is almost the entire screen. And just keep in mind that that was 7.5 yard radius. This one is 8.3 yard radius. So each one of these explosions covers the entire screen. So you have multiple explosions overlapping with each other, and the damage gets silly. Let's just say it just gets silly. I'll quickly go over attributes. You can do a lot of different things. I'd say the highest priority here is to get the 75% increased elemental damage by maxing willpower. It also gives you elemental pen. It gives you area increased size and a few other benefits for the build. Other than that, I did go for Ancestral Strike heals, but I really don't think we need it. Make sure to get the 10% crit chance. This is an extremely high value investment, just getting up to here for 10% crit chance. Other than that, though, honestly, you could do just so many different things with this build. We don't need the cost reduction. We just don't need very many things out of the passive skill tree, to be honest with you. So do whatever you want. For affixes, they're extremely similar to what we were running with my previous build guide. One of the most important things that you want is additional projectiles in the shoulder. The percent life multiplier, obviously, you need in the helmet. You want the percent life multiplier in the aura for the chest piece. However, keep in mind that this aura does not benefit from aura effect modifiers. This grafted chest piece legendary affix onto the cape is one of the best ways to gain survivability, thanks to the life stacking and life sealing that we've done. That is pretty much my only source of evasion. As you can see, 508k from conversion. And this is how we have 97% evasion. Absolutely ridiculous. The belt, not too important, gives a stagger. The amulet legendary affix does nothing for us. The gloves affix does nothing for us. The rings convert mana cost to life cost just to make things a little bit easier. I'm not even sure that we need this, to be honest with you, but I haven't really tested it without it. And then this gives us even more survivability because we have life in the defensive slots for both rings, and they're obviously maxed pure stats. For the boots, we opted for move speed multiplier. And then bracers, I actually opted against the elemental damage multiplier that you can get in bracers. Imagine that. We dropped a 31% more elemental damage multiplier for quality of life, for extra pickup radius. That's how much we don't need damage with this build. We could easily get 30% more damage. But yeah, the core affixes I would say for the build are for elemental damage stacking, you got the helmet, the chest, and the cape. And then for projectile count, the shoulder. Those are the most important affix slots for the build. In terms of stats, you can see I'm running a lot of max life and a lot of pure stats for max life in my affixes. So much so that I'm up to 826,000 max life. Don't care about max mana, don't care about armor, don't care about elemental res. We do try to stack some cooldown reduction, not too much. 33% is probably about the right amount we need. And then 68% attack speed. You probably don't need much more than that either. Elemental damage, you can definitely get it higher by getting more life and by getting more percent increased elemental damage multipliers in some of your affixes if you really wanted to. Crit chance, we should be pushing it up to 100%. And then if you can get even more crit damage, that's always good. Don't care about Ancestral Strike chance and damage too much. A little bit of Ancestral Strike chance is good if you opted for the attribute that gives you heal on Ancestral Strikes. Some damage to elites is nice. Shadow Res, I would even push it up higher if I could. Tenacity, make sure you have at least 100%. Here's our projectile counts, and that is only with a 13 reinforced level on the shoulder. It's pretty easy to get that to over 8. Rebound chance, once we upgrade the items, it's going to be 100%. And then these are quite valuable as well. Area increased size and area increased effect. Area increased effect is a more damage multiplier for the build. So get that up to 100-ish. Area increased size, the higher it is, the more your procs of temporal friction are going to overlap and the more coverage you're going to get. And the less you're going to be in danger, really. Because once you're clearing enemies from like 2 screens away, there's nothing to worry about. We have gold finding the ultimatum because really we don't even know what to do with it. Obviously, we are running the percent max life multiplier staff. For runes, you can probably do whatever you want. I just recently switched to the Proj runes. You can see it's not even leveled up to 15, so I gotta get on that. If I were to fine-tune my items a bit more and get more pure stats in the helmet and the amulet, I would probably opt for a bit more crit damage. If possible, I would graft some additional legendary affixes that benefit the build. For example, that 31% more elemental damage multiplier from the bracers. We could probably slot that in the amulet or the glove. The glove actually has a bunch of decent options that I didn't entertain switching into because we just don't really need anything in the build. The build just overperforms so much already. I don't care to optimize it. It's just so overpowered already. There's also a legendary helmet affix that makes it so that anytime you might die, you get revived or you avoid death with a percent chance equal to your percent evade or percent dodge chance. So that would be 97% for us. So we could slot that in the amulet, for example, and be even more immortal. But again, you don't need that because we have never been in danger. But you can always min-max for the sake of min-maxing just to see how high you can push that DPS number. You can also probably use this build to just level up all of your primordial staves. Because even without all the max life that you get from this staff, you probably have enough damage to just wipe everything around you. And that's the end of the build guide. I hope you guys get a chance to try this out because this build is kind of ridiculous. It's definitely the most overpowered thing I've played so far in Slormancer. The greatest downside for this build is the visual clutter and how overwhelming it is for your eyesight to just have all that flashing across your screen all the time, especially if you get even higher attack speed or cooldown or whatever. It's just a bit too much. You almost have to hold back on spamming Arcane Missile in order to not overwhelm your senses. But if you can make some of those quality of life adjustments for yourself, this build can be how you gear up and farm up ridiculous amount of resources so you can pivot towards other builds. But I must warn you, once you've played crazy overpowered builds, it's kind of difficult to switch back to some of the less overpowered builds. So just keep that in mind. But overall, I'm extremely satisfied with the build, and I think this is the end of my Slormancer journey for a little bit. I'm guessing next time I play the game, I'm probably going to play Huntress, because I have 0 minutes, 0 hours spent on Huntress. So I'd love to take a stab at it as well at some point. But for now, I feel like we've sufficiently broken the game, with 3 pretty crazy builds, I must say. So thank you to everybody who tuned into the Slormancer streams. Next, we will most likely play Path of Exile 1 next week. No promises yet, though. I'm still trying to figure out if I have a build or a plan that I want to execute on. But I hope you all enjoyed either way. Looks like it's going to be a blast. Thanks, everybody. Much love and gochisto. Hasta